Okay, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap the Mets versus Orioles series, as well as all the other news and rumors that's been going on for the past few days. We apologize for a little bit of a delay there for the start, some technical difficulties. It happens. But other than that, let's get into it here. But before we do that, I just want to let everyone know to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already for this very podcast, which is now recorded live on Sundays and Thursdays regularly. Sometimes it lines up with the series a little bit different. Like today, we are live on Wednesdays. But for those of you who are watching on playback and you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, we see tons of people having some conversations with themselves before we even started. Just want to let you guys know, we love reading those comments, those questions, your concerns, and if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. They're just being starred throughout the show, and we'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going, to not, interrupt that cycle of conversation. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features this guy, my main co-host here, Frank About Sports, and his instant reactions after every single Mets game, titled the Mets Frankly Post Game. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of these new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day that these are recorded. So let's get into episode number 76. Now, the Mets ended this one on an exclamation point. If I could talk properly, that would move the show a lot better. But the Mets just won a series against a very good Baltimore Orioles team. And let's just say there were some frustrating moments. There were some really good moments. There are some that have stuck out better than others. And I just want to say that I'm encouraged to see them play competitive baseball against a competitive baseball team. Does it make me a little bit annoyed that they didn't do well against these uncompetitive baseball teams as compared to this? Make it make sense. That would be cool. But listen, baseball is baseball. Anything can happen. Of course, across 162, the events are endless. We don't know, especially with the Mets. They're the Mets. That's just how they are. But I think that the full-on feelings going into a huge trip to San Diego, I think that they're in a decent position. They have definitely put themselves in a solid position after this series, and hopefully they continue that.
Yeah, I mean, it stinks when your bullpen doesn't do well, right? I mean, that's we really saw the Baltimore Orioles just like in full effect. We saw their young hitters, their good offense, sometimes they're hitting home runs and things like that, but the big struggle for Baltimore has been their bullpen. And, they brought in Sir Anthony Dominguez right around the deadline to help try to shore that up. And he gives up walk-off home runs in both of his outings. So that definitely is a tough blow for them as they're fighting with the Yankees for first place. So it was nice, like you said, see the Mets get a win against a team that does have a really good record compared to some of the other series that they've lost recently. So it is kind of confusing, but like you said, there was a little bit of everything here. I like that we saw some power, especially from certain guys who we're going to get into, guys who haven't really been hitting home runs lately. So that was really encouraging. To do it in your home ballpark is always even better. So I really liked that. We'll get to the defense and pitching and coaching decisions and things like that. So, even though it's only 3 games, you feel like you got a little bit of everything, like you said. Like, there was, like, some good stuff that you feel good about, but then there were a bit of ugly things that, like, oh, that's not going to get it done. So, definitely was a lot of emotions in the span of only 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, overall with the offense, I can just say, I mean, it pretty much just proves the theory, and it's not really a theory, it's a known fact, especially in the postseason. Power can cover a lot of sins. And one swing of the bat can instantly change the game. And we saw it from both sides. The Mets walked off the Orioles twice in this with a big home run from Alvarez and then Winker in the final game. You also saw the Orioles turn this thing around with the long ball as well against David Peterson when things went awry with the balk, and then the next pitch
And
he
Mania
throws,
too.
they tie the game. Mania, they break up all the momentum. of his perfect game or his no hitter when he hit that one batter.
Mhm.
So home runs can change it. It really does, and that's the main thing is that power is really needed as one of the main contributors to your offense because again, it's just one swing of the bat. And listen, it's when we talk about the one base outcome types of things, like yeah, they're good. You can manufacture runs, stealing bases that way, but when you have somebody who can find their pitch, doesn't swing at bad pitches, and can find their pitch and destroy that pitch, you got to take advantage of it. And they treated this like a playoff series, and you're going to be playing these playoff series at best of 3 in the wild card if you make it. And they won 2 out of 3 here. So those are the types of teams you're going to be playing. So, hopefully they continue to play to their opponents or whatever. I'm hoping that they don't play down to their opponents the next time that we play an uncompetitive team, which is the White Sox. So that will be pretty embarrassing if they don't, which that team is on another level of terrible. But when we just talk about the Mets playing competitive baseball, doing those little things to just contribute to wins and basically just put out 9 innings of solid baseball. And even though we know that the Mets continue to be a very streaky team and very inconsistent, we see them score a lot in bunches. We see them just fall asleep for 6 innings. We see just a constant domino effect of the pitching with the defense and things like that. But at the end, it's like we've said, it's not how you start, it is how you finish. And you're going to need those types of late game heroics that you got from Winker today and Alvarez in the first game of the series. And I do want to get into that series wholeheartedly because, again, lots of positives. There were some negatives sprinkled in there as well, and we'll get into all of it. But let's take a look at the series rundown. Game 1, David Peterson was good through 6 innings, but he struggled in the 7th after balking in a run and surrendering the tying run on a solo homer on the next pitch. But nonetheless, still a quality start against a really good offense. 2 earned runs in 7 innings pitched, just 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. The Mets offense started early in the first with a 2-run homer by JDM. Tyrone Taylor added to it later on with an RBI. Baltimore's bullpen would shut down the Mets from there before the 9th inning, where Francisco Alvarez delivered a monstrous solo home run to walk it off and secure the Game 1 victory. Game 2, Jose Quintana, absolutely horrendous. 7 earned runs. I don't know where 3 came from. 7 earned runs in 5 draining innings. He also gave up a home run to former Met James McCann. Yeah, that's how pathetic Jose Quintana is these days. He now owns a 8.27 earned run average in the month of August, and it has just been very painful to watch with Jose Quintana. As for the offense, though, Mark Vientos got the Mets on the board in the 3rd with an RBI double. JDM later on hit a 3-run home run to make it a 2-run game, but the bullpen gave it right back with the most Mets inning ever, just throwing the ball around like a bunch of constipated whales and losing Game 2 9-5. Game 3, Sean Manaea dealt yet another great 7 innings, flirted with a perfect game for a bit, but ended the day with 0 walks and 9 strikeouts. Big key for him. Francisco Lindor opened the scoring with a solo shot. JD Martinez drove in a run on a fielder's choice. Mark Vientos broke a 2-2 tie with a solo shot off of future Hall of Famer Craig Kimbrell. If you've watched us and listened to us before the beginning of time, you know where that comes from. Budo ended up giving up the tying run, but he did limit the damage. He did get screwed out of some calls from the home plate umpire, costing him 2 outs on 1 play. But the big blow came again in the 9th. Jesse Winker off the bench hits a walk-off homer against Sir Anthony Dominguez. What a moment. What a celebration. The Mets walk off Dominguez twice in 3 days, and they notched the series victory, taking 2 out of 3 from a very good Orioles team. Now, there are some main takeaways that I'd like to get into with this series. and I don't really want to start off negative here, but it's such a glaring part of this series that really kept you from, I don't know, possibly sweeping this thing. I just want to get it out the way really quick because we've talked about it before way too many times. Jose Quintana cannot make another start for this team. And that's really sad when I say that because they don't have an option. They don't have any other options for anybody else to start. Could you move around some pieces, maybe move Budo to the rotation, get very technical in that? It's too late. It's way too late. And the fact that the Mets have to bite the bullet every single 5 days, I don't see any possibility that you win with Jose Quintana on the mound. And the fact that it's pointing me to a point as to where somebody asked this in the comments before this show started, asking my opinion changing on David Peterson. I mean, at this point, is he just like the better guy to put in a game 3 scenario as compared to somebody like Quintana? I mean, we've kind of gotten to that point now. I mean,
100%.
whether you want to talk about Paul Blackburn or not, who he's had his good outings, he has had his bad, but Peterson's been able to actually get the job done. Quintana's been a flat out turd every 5 days. And and I hate to be completely, very harsh in that matter. I'm sure Quintana's a great guy, but he is one of the main reasons as to why this team has not been able to string together wins and only at best take 2 out of 3. Because every 5 days we've had to see this guy labor through 5 innings. And it's become a liability to this rotation, which sucks because, again, they don't have any other options.
Yeah, I mean that is really the tough part is that what else you're gonna do, and like you said with Budo, it's way too late. Not only has he done so well in the bullpen role, but now with the way he was used in this series for the first time, he was making 1 inning outings, more traditional reliever stuff, not a guy that goes 2 or maybe 3, and that's like kind of building towards a starter workload. Like they had him working like a true setup man, and that's going to be the case until Nunez is fully back. He's working his way back, so that's good. But other than that, it's like you said, what is your choice? And Quintana, it's gotten to the point where he's been so bad that you can't tell me that using Sproat is a worse option. I just feel like when you're, especially being behind in the wild card race, like that's the tough part too, is that when you see San Diego playing so well and Arizona playing so well and now Atlanta's playing a little better, you just don't have time right now. You don't have room for error where it's like, you know what? Manai's pitching really good for us, and Peterson's doing a good job, and Blackburn's doing stuff, and Severino put together a gem. So we're just gonna still have Quintana in the rotation. Like when you're behind, you can't afford to just be giving games away, and he's getting beat up so bad that it's giving games away. I mean, that start in Oakland, I still think, even though he gave up more runs in the start against Baltimore, I still feel like the start in Oakland was worse because it was worse competition and more base runners via walk, and it's just become unacceptable. Like I say, far too often he's in hitter counts, and then what happens is, in order to stop walking the ballpark, he just grooves them. And with his stuff right now, like you showed, he hit 92, but for the most part, he's hanging around 89, 90, and there's just not much there. There's just not much life on his pitches that a lot of times he's just serving it up on a tee. Like the 3-2 curveball he threw to Santander, that was a cookie. Like it's just far too often that you're seeing stuff like that with him, and it's just not gonna get it done. And his inability to work deep into games because of that pitching style of the nibbling and everything is a long count and there's always runners on base. That also affects what your other guys are doing. I felt that they pushed David Peterson too much in game 1. I feel like we haven't seen him go 7 innings because he tends to walk the ballpark as well. So, you push David Peterson, and then Quintana doesn't give you much. And then you had Sean Manaea pitching into the eighth inning for the first time this season, the first time in a couple years for him. So you're trying to like overcompensate because of what Quintana is doing. Because Quintana does not go deep into the game against Oakland, now Severino has to pitch 9 innings against the Marlins. So you're really just kind of straining everybody else because of one pitcher performing so poorly. And what the problem as well is that with his age, it's just not going to get better. That's the thing that is also really concerning to me, is that like if the stuff was good and there were some unlucky breaks, you're like, oh, okay, maybe he could turn around. He's not going to. That's just kind of what it's been. It's been happening too frequently, and recently it just feels like it's getting worse. And you just can't compete like that. Like you said, when you're going to be facing tougher competition, like in this case the Orioles, and these teams are scoring 5 to 7 runs, you're really, really asking a lot of your offense to overcome that. That's just really hard to do. And right now, still, David Peterson has the lowest ERA of all the starting pitchers on the team. So if somehow the Mets did get into a playoff series, I would think he'd have to be the third guy. I mean, unless you call up Sproat and he's dominant, or somehow Scott comes back and then does really well and is not serving up home runs to lefties in the fifth inning, I just don't see the other scenarios there, because like you said, Budo's not getting moved into the rotation, and Blackburn I still have my questions on. I just feel like Peterson's just been much more steady, and to see him do it against a team like Baltimore I thought was also very encouraging, because we talk so much about, oh, Peterson's numbers are great, but look at the competition, he's not doing it against the most elite teams, but this time he did against Baltimore, so I thought that was really, really encouraging. So not that I have a ultra amount of confidence in him, but when you just look at the options, you just can't throw Quintana. And that's the thing too, is that also with his stuff, you can't even put him on the roster. You're not going to bring him out of the bullpen, so he's just a guy that, right now, he's just simply there because of the injuries. And it's like, because we don't have Senga, and because Scott is hurt and McGill was not doing well, it's like we're just stuck with him. Like, we just have to use him. Yeah. And that's just a really unfortunate spot to be in. And I don't know if a random pitcher might get DFA'd from another team that could make starts, and even if they can't be put on a playoff roster, just someone to take the ball every 5 days that doesn't get you killed. That's something that you might have to consider, because it's just gotten to that point. And with his contract right now, and he's on the last year of the deal, you have no ties to him. So if you need to move on for him, it shouldn't be much of an issue. And it's just frustrating that the problems that he's having are things that were strengths for him through his entirety of his career. Keeping the ball in the ballpark, not walking batters. Those were his two best things, and now that's become his two worst things. So he's just not who he used to be. And age plays a factor, but still, it's just really alarming that it's just constantly happening. And it's something that they really... It just makes it really hard to get in the race, stay in the race, maintain a playoff spot when you have this happening every 5 games.
Yeah, and listen, I think that it does come as a thought where, he is an experienced lefty, he's an experienced pitcher, he's been in the league for a while, and I think that there is a whole debate there. Like you're talking about with his stuff, you can't put this guy in the bullpen. It just can't happen. And if you want to make him like some kind of situational lefty, which, again, that makes no sense. Left-handers are killing him more than right-handers this year. They're slugging .509 against him. I mean, he's not facing as many left-handed hitters as compared to right-handed hitters because of the matchups that he's getting, but I mean, he's getting destroyed by any lefty. Like, he's putting everything in their wheelhouse, and he's getting just destroyed. And the fact that we have to deal with this every single 5 days without any choice in the matter, it's just completely taxing. You don't have that advantage as to where the Mets, they can afford to just lose one of these games automatically, because we know that the other 4 games of the guys in the rotation, they're probably going to lose one of those too. And I don't want to be in a position as to where, oh, well, the Mets have to win this game. Guess who's on the mound? Jose Quintana. Because I know that's eventually going to happen. Like, we are up against the Braves, right? The Braves are the only team in our way as of right now, because San Diego and Arizona are kind of moving out, and maybe the Mets do gain some ground on them if they do win. But when you talk about the Mets and the Braves, 2 years ago, that was the deciding factor, pretty much for that division as well. The Mets still made the playoffs or whatever, but they got swept out of Atlanta towards the end of that season, and it pretty much just put a nail in the coffin for a team that they basically, they had all the positive vibes going on. They had won 101 games. Everybody liked it, but it just basically just knocked them out. It still just was not. It was the telling card that they just weren't ready for it. And the fact that when you have those deciding games with Atlanta, because they do have games with Atlanta coming up in the future, the fact that you're putting Jose Quintana on the mound, I mean, obviously this is a different situation. This is a Atlanta team that is injured to hell. I mean, think about it here with how the Braves always find a way. If we get swept out of Atlanta with DeGrom, Max, and Bassett on the mound, how are we going to do with somebody like Jose Quintana going out for one of those series? Because he's going to line up for one of them. He's going to be facing teams that we're going to have to be facing that are ahead of us. And I'm sure after us saying all of this stuff about Jose Quintana, I'm sure there's going to be one start where he gives you 7 scoreless or 7 innings of 1-run ball. I still don't trust him. I just don't. And the problem that I have with this is that every single 5 days, it's not even the fact that the Mets offense it'll fold and they're not doing well. He doesn't even give us a chance. He doesn't even give us a chance to do anything. He gives us 1 inning of something and sweats through that. The Mets don't hit the next inning, and then it's just the floodgates are open. And that's the problem with Quintana. There's nothing there that's actually encouraging, but you're stuck with him. There's you don't have any choice. And I've come to a situation where, especially these last 2 starts, one I got to see live in front of my eyes, and the other night, it's come to a point where you can't have any margin. You have no margin for error whatsoever. You have absolutely no margin for error. And it's come to a point where I was thinking about this last night, and I'm like, I'm kind of willing to, Nunez comes back, I'm kind of willing to just deal with Adam Ottavino some more. If that means Quintana gets the fuck out of here. Budo moves to the rotation. Because, I feel like we've come to the desperate measures of every 5 days, this guy's going to lay an egg. And I'm sure there's a few good starts sprinkled in with it, but do you trust this guy to go up against some of these teams that are coming up? No. You just don't. He's been horrible. And I got so much shit for wanting to trade him at the trade deadline. I wanted to get rid of him. Asset management with that great stretch that he had. It's because of shit like this. Because he wasn't going to keep it up. Because he's not that good anymore. And now you have to deal with it every 5 days. Now, of course, that kind of got pushed out of the equation with Senga going down, Scott going down, and all of that. But when you think about it, Jose Quintana is not somebody you want in that rotation every single 5 days, especially a 35-year-old Jose Quintana who constantly works these full counts, as Marcus is saying. Jose 3-2 Quintana. Exactly. Always has the full counts. Constantly working up these pitch counts. Not giving you any volume. At this rate that they are going to, this guy is going to kill more bullpen arms than we already have. We've already had tons of bullpen injuries. There's been tons of guys that have gotten, there's been tons of turnover as well in this bullpen. He's been a complete liability
this season.
What happened?
35 pitchers used in total this season.
That's a lot. That is a lot.
It's a lot.
So
like 3 staffs worth.
Yeah. So, at one point, I mean, what good? What good is it to have this guy actually pitch out there? I'd much rather take the risk of ramping up Budo in such little time that we have than just throw away a game like this with him on the mound. Like, exactly what is he actually providing to be a valuable part of the rotation? He's not giving you volume. He's not giving you quality. He's not giving you strikeouts. He's walking the bat. He's just walking the. He's making it worse. He's just rubbing salt into the wound. We know that this offense will always be streaky and always feeds off momentum. All right, try. Let's gain some momentum down 7-0 in the third inning. Yeah, that makes sense.
And they tried.
Go ahead. Thanks,
and
man.
They tried. They got it 7-5. Like they were pushing, and then they started throwing the ball all around. But JB Stearns brings up a point here about a bullpen game, and my thought is the only thing
you're going to be killing even more arms.
Well, the only thing McGill has going for him is that the first 3 innings he could be decent. So if McGill gives you 3, and then you could go, I mean, who knows? Maybe Reed Garrett, and then maybe Nunez or something. Like, you probably could piece a good game together if you needed to, but it's just tough to do that.
Then you're relying on because Severino to give you
exactly
7 innings the next day.
Everyone else needs to go deep into games to make up for that. So that's the hard part. Is that, like, if it's just one game, you could get away with it and maybe do okay, but I don't think it's something you really could do every 5 days.
Yeah, it almost sounds like Jose Quintana he's pretty much a 0 on this roster right now.
I mean,
all he's doing is making things
negative.
worse.
It's not a 0. It's
the net negative. Exactly.
Negative.
He's a 0. Like, he just doesn't give you anything.
Stress.
So, and the fact that they're stuck with it right now.
And he's giving the West Coast games again. That means that we have to stay up till 12:30 with this guy boring us to death walking the ballpark.
Yeah. I can't really, the fact that we have to piece things together, to keep him here as to where putting him in every single situation. I mean, like you said, like a few minutes ago, we don't have time for this. We don't have time for this. There's no room for error. And like we've said, with how close-knit this last wild card spot is right now, back-to-back losses or 2 losses in a series. I mean, it's exact. And then Ken comes in here basically just talking about it volume-wise, like just in general. And anyone noticed Mets starters have been going at least 6 innings every game lately, except Quintana. Well, there you go. Exactly. And you need to make up those 6 innings from those starters who are going 6 innings. And now you got to make up from 4 innings from Quintana. I mean, it's what we call weighing the team down. And that's exactly what Quintana is doing right now. And I'm sure everybody in the clubhouse likes him. I'm sure he's a great guy. But, like, at some point, like, we gotta pin things down at some point. I mean, we knew when Adrian Hauser was not contributing to the rotation, and then they moved him to the bullpen, he did okay, and then he started to struggle again. And they were like, okay, you know what? Cut the cord here. Let's move on. Now, Quintana's making a little bit more money, and then, but, I mean, I really am willing to sacrifice a lot of things to get Quintana off this roster right now. I really am. Whether that means stretching out Budo, even though it's too late already. It's way too late to do that. And we'll probably injure him in the process of that. Even though you don't have Senga or Scott, right now they are really struggling to get the 160 innings that you got from Kodai Senga last year. You're not getting that filled in by anyone. And when you are, it's getting constantly just, it all fades away. Every single piece of good vibes, what you want to say, or this or that, it's getting ruined by Jose Quintana every 5 days. And it's not like anybody else in this rotation isn't susceptible to blow-ups. We've seen blow-ups from them as well. So the fact that we've have him as a guaranteed blow-up every 5 days, that doesn't help. It does not help whatsoever, especially when you're in a playoff race where every single game counts.
And you're behind.
And you're behind, too. And I don't want this to be a 2019 scenario where the Mets continue to gain ground. Let's say they're 5 games out or 4 games out. They continue to gain ground. And then we get to that last little hurdle, half game out, one game out. And they can't find a way to get over that hump and into playoff position. And that's how I kind of feel about this team right now, where they keep winning, they win series, they keep going like this. And then, right when it gets to the edge, 2 games, 1 game away from that last spot, they just sink. And that all kind of has to do with how it lines up in this rotation. Jose Quintana is not helping that. Like, think about, I think about how this would pretty much line up. You better hope to pray that you don't run into Quintana when you need a win, when you're a half game out. Especially when, which pisses me off the most, whenever you see the Braves lose and Quintana can't get his shit together in the same day, when it's all lined up perfectly. It's just so, it's so draining. It just can't happen. You should not have holes in your rotation that are he's unusable right now. So, I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore, but let's get into actually this series as a whole. Let's just say one thing, Mark Vientos continues to hit, continues to contribute. I mean, he really has just been one of the just stalwarts in this lineup this entire series since he was called up from AAA Syracuse. And he's been one of the main contributors to this offense. Francisco Lindor, even though some contributors from a deep roster where we've had a lot of contributors overall, I can honestly say from Francisco Lindor, from all 5 tools, from all 5 aspects, he really is carrying this team on his back right now. I mean, when you look at it, he is hitting for power. He's hitting for contact. Obviously, we know about the elite defense that he brings every single game. The base running as well. He's stealing bases. I mean, he is doing pretty much everything.
And his leadership. I would actually consider him a 6-tool player with his leadership and the way
sure.
he mentors everyone.
All right. Yeah, I mean, he really has put the team on his back right now. And we've talked about Lindor being a streaky hitter, being inconsistent or whatever. Every single game, this guy is on base. Every single game, he is doing something, whether it is with his feet, with his bat, with his arm. The man has just been all over the diamond from both sides of the ball. And I don't think
the F4 shows it.
I mean, yeah, exactly. If you want to talk about just full on win value as numbers, but if you're looking at it just from your eyes every single day, it seems like Lindor is in the middle of everything. It almost seems like he's playing like a $341 million player. Would have figured. I mean, obviously we've seen the struggles of Lindor, but he seems to have really just got it going in that leadoff spot. And I don't see any possibility as to where Lindor leaves that leadoff spot for the rest of his Mets career right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I really,
fourth, like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't see him leaving that leadoff spot ever again. Like I just don't. Even to when he's like in his mid-30s with his contract here, he still should be leaving off at this current moment. You know, give him the Joey Votto treatment, where you know he's going to just get on base. Speaking of Joey Votto, by the way, we do have some breaking news. He has announced his retirement. So congratulations to Joey Votto on a fantastic career, one of the best hitters of this generation, one of my personal favorites when he would hit bombs in Cincinnati in his prime. But yeah, so I guess he's not going to get to 3,000. So that stinks. But speaking of, just wanted to segue that in there. But with Lindor, with just the overall contributors, Lindor, Vientos, I mean, they have been the earning of the top 2 in this lineup because they've been the best and most consistent for a majority of this season. We all know that Lindor started off slow. And the thing is that I feel like eventually it should start to trickle down the rest of the lineup and you get that consistency. But when you talk about, the Mets scoring in bunches, and of course we have guys that, get on before somebody and runners in scoring position, all those struggles, you always see Lindor starting it, or maybe Lindor ending it, or Mark Vientos contributing. These two have been the most consistent hitters throughout the majority of the season. And they've been one of the main reasons as to why they are where they are offensively. So at the end of the day, I think that when you look at these two on the left side of the infield, even though Mark Vientos isn't the defensive stalwart that he is, he's made some mistakes as well. These are two cornerstone pieces right now that have been the main heavy lifters. Usually we've talked about Lindor being a heavy lifter, not somebody like Vientos. We've usually talked about Lindor and Alonso. Now that's kind of shifted right now. Now we've kind of shifted to somebody like Mark Vientos right now, who has gotten the job and ran with it. And we'll obviously talk about the other guy thing later. But I mean, anything you want to add on there? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
been
Vientos,
incredible.
he's on a 162 pace of 40 home runs in his
Yeah.
first full season and doing it at the third base position. So that's not common, like they really have something elite there as far as they were talking about it. Just like his power to all fields is just really, really sensational. And he could just kind of, it seems like now he could kind of put the ball where he wants almost. Like, you want to go left center? Okay, you want to go right center? You want to go right field, dead center? Like, he could just kind of put it where he wants to. Like, he's able to also be on a pace of 40 home runs while maintaining OPS near 900, while batting nearly 280. So even like our boy Santander, where he's got about 40 home runs, but he's in like 230 something. So it's like he's doing it in a way where he's getting the power while not always trying to hit for power. He's just still doing things that are just very productive offensively. There's still ugly chases, particularly on the outside part of the plate, but I think that overall, for a young player in his first full season, there is a lot to like. And you just hope that with time, that's just going to continue to improve. And I think the same thing could be said for third base. As he continues to get those reps, he's going to do okay. And he's making nice plays. Like, I mean, he had the one today to kind of keep Manaya's perfect game going, where he circles the ball, and he has a cannon at third, which is extremely important to be a third baseman. So there still is a lot to like. And I've just been really impressed and just really proud of him. And to me, I still think that regardless of the Mets make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, I feel like his emergence is the biggest storyline of the season, because it's so nice when you have a homegrown young player solve a hole for you that has been a hole for a long time. That goes a long way. And whether he needs to get moved because of other things that happen, at least you know that, like, when you're assembling a lineup and you have 9 guys that you gotta have on an everyday basis, for sure he's one of those 9. Lindor is one. Nimmo is one. You're a third of the way there. Alvarez is one, so now you're almost halfway there. So it's like you have, like, we call it a core, like you're off to a good start. And Jeff McNeil is going to be in that mix too. So like it just makes things a lot easier for short term, long term, just kind of team assembling. His performance has just been huge.
One thing I've really liked from Mark Vientos, and then we'll obviously move on to the main guy I want to talk about, who hit that huge home run today. With Mark Vientos, what we've talked about with him, and we've talked about the chases and the whiffs, and there's a lot of swing and miss in his game. He's going to strike out a lot because he is, he's a power hitter. That's what he does. He's all 4 corners, and sometimes he gets bested. It happens. There's swing and miss, but when he does make contact, it's going to go far. And we've seen that 20 times this year, and tons of extra base hits as well. But again, when we talk about just the overall chasing and whiffing, swing and miss, just overall discipline, the 2-strike approach with Mark Vientos, it has gotten so much better as compared to the first 2 years, a few cups of coffee that he has gotten. I mean, we look at him with a 3-2 count. He has a 771 OPS. You look at him with a 1-2 count, he has a 715 OPS. You look at him with an 0-2 count, a 845 OPS. And the fact that he's been able to do this, it pretty much just wraps up the bottle as to maybe, I don't know, if a middle finger to Billy Epler as to where him playing every day and seeing more pitches allows him to actually build up a 2-strike approach or build up a 3-1 approach in a hitter's count. More pitches, more reps, letting him play, giving him these actual opportunities. He's been able to be a little bit more of a complete hitter. And that's what he's known to do. He's a hitter, not a complete player, a complete hitter.
And he's doing it in the number 2 spot and a very important part of the lineup, batting after a legitimate MVP candidate. So there's something to be said there that, like, he's done this while majorly not being second. So he's done it any part in the lineup they put him. Like, he's batting 5th, he's batting 4th, 3rd, 2nd. Like, it's not like Lindor, like, oh, you got to keep him 1. At least with Vientos, he's been moving all around the lineup. And I feel like, again, going forward, if he's hitting this well, like if he's your second best hitter or maybe best hitter when you look at OPS, you should leave him up top and just, more ABs and just more opportunities to do damage. And I feel like him and Lindor is a 1-2 combo with how often Lindor is getting on base and stealing bases. That's a really nice combination. So I just find it so interesting that, like you said, 2-strike approach, having a plan at the plate, to do that while having, like I said last episode, the least amount of major league games in the lineup. It really says something. He plays like a veteran in a lot of ways when he still is just an overall really young player as far as experience.
Yeah, I mean, talking about taking the job and running with it, this is all that Mark Vientos has really done. He's continued to just take the job and run no matter what they throw at him, he's continued to succeed and succeed consistently. We've talked about them going and putting him third base. He's not amazing at third base, but he's been able to stay in the lineup every single day with his bat that has been a main contributor to the Mets offense. Then they put him in the 2-hole. And that was the first game that they put him in the 2-hole. I was in attendance for that. Right away, he hits 2 home runs in that game. It doesn't take time. It's not like this Brett Beatty, give him time, let him go. No. Mark Vientos, he's there to swing. He's there to hit for power. He knows what he is capable of. If you give him that opportunity, you put the confidence into him as a young player, especially when we talk about the constant impact that Lindor and Martinez have had on him. You put him in a good spot as to where he can succeed because, yes, he has holes in his game. But he's continued to improve, and he's continued to look more like a major league hitter. And right now, you can label him as a major league hitter. He's an MLB hitter now. And to see the Mets just develop that, internally without having to throw money at somebody else. I mean, we talked about third base plenty of times.
Every year.
Nolan Arenado, get Alex Bregman, get this guy. Oh, well, we lost Ronnie Mauricio. We're done,
They had a 10-year contract for
conversations.
Correa to play third base. So, like, they knew it was an issue, too.
I mean, he is doing it all right now. He is absolutely doing it all, and he has deserved the 2 spot. That's what he has done. He has deserved the 2 spot. A guy that can do it all. And the fact that, he continues to be an efficient hitter from any point of an AB. Yes, you get some strikeouts here and then, but he has come through when it matters. Let's just say, I don't know, 8 times out of 10. You want to talk about 4 times out of 5? He's come through because he's been able to have this playing time. They gave him the reins. They gave him the reins to do it. What?
Yeah, I'm looking at third base right now, and like outside of Paul DeJong, Vientos is right here with all these third basemen as far as home runs. And most of these guys have nearly 200 more plate appearances than Vientos, yet only have 1 more home run. Like guys like Machado, guys like Bregman, Candelario, Chisholm, like all these like guys, I suppose Bregman that we just talked about, they're at 20 home runs, 21 home runs, and they all have almost 200 more plate appearances than him. So it's like if he was there, he'd be right up at the top. He'd be right there with Devers and probably just trailing J Ram. But and just overall, when you're looking at OPS, the only guy ahead of him is Devers, and right now sample size, he's still ahead of J Ram. So
Good company.
he's just
Let's just say
been that good. Like he doesn't steal bases like Jose Ramirez does, or plays defense like Jose Ramirez does, but offensively, he has been one of the best in all of baseball.
Yeah. And neither does Rafi Devers doesn't do that either. He doesn't play defense well either. So if you're getting a type of Rafi Devers corner bat from third base, I mean, even though there's a possibility he moves over to first base or something like that in the future, different conversation for a different time. But the thing is that Mark Vientos has just consistently been a contributor to this lineup as compared to all of the other young players. When you talk about it, these guys go on a streak and then they disappear. We've seen that happen with Francisco Alvarez. He's gone on a streak and then he's disappeared. Mark Vientos has been in the main thick of everything for this offense every single day. So, I mean, talking about just promising pieces. I mean, I'm really impressed from what we have gotten from Mark Vientos, and I think that a lot of people are talking about this in a different way as to where, some people believed in Beatty more, some people believed in Vientos more, some wanted to just see Ronnie Mauricio, and they didn't get to see him this year. For me, I mean, I've always just been like, okay, let's just like let Vientos play. I got to see what we got in Mark Vientos. I was open to any possibility. I was open to let Mark Vientos be the GH, bring in JD Martinez. I didn't really care what they did because I feel like there was upside no matter what in any scenario. So I'm glad to see Mark Vientos just constantly being a contributor. I feel like we've become a Mark Vientos fan club podcast at this point because we are talking about this guy every single episode because
he's always doing something productive.
He's just been so productive every single series. Constantly, consistently. I mean, he has just been the main piece, one of the main pieces to this offense. Same thing goes for Lindor. You can talk about Lindor too. But, I mean, just an absolute stalwart this year offensively. And hopefully he keeps it up again. Maybe, you hope that pitchers don't start to figure him out. There's going to be some really good pitching he's going to be facing this week. So we'll see what happens. But he has handled it fairly well. Now, speaking of roles and impact that a guy has had, let's talk about Jesse Winker for a second, because I think that Jesse Winker, I feel like there has been kind of a mixed feeling about him because it's more of just him just being put on more of a spotlight than anything. And personally, it's not really fair to him because he was the only bat that the Mets did acquire at the trade deadline. When you're the only bat and the Mets, who have been an inconsistent offense for a while, when you're the only bat that gets acquired at the trade deadline, you're expected to be a big contributor. And that's just not really what Jesse Winker is. He's a role player who can fill in some margins as well, do a lot little things right as well. Just give you an extra base runner, give you an extra outfield option. So I feel like we have gotten a decent look as to what Jesse Winker can provide. And the reason why I want to talk about his role and his impact is because, I mean, right now we have 5 outfielders on this roster right now. And we talked about kind of sliding Marte back into the mix. He's back in the mix. He's healthy. He's looked good as well. That's another guy we can talk about. Just overall, he looks better, especially defensively too, which he's just looked a little bit less, remote, let's just say overall. But small sample size, whatever, we'll see. But the thing about how I look at it with Winker is he an everyday player in this lineup? Probably not. But you also kind of have to put in the factor of, with Winker, is the Mets don't have many left-handed bats. and they're going to be facing a lot of righties, especially coming up. And you'd like to have a little bit of that advantage, especially when you've seen a lot of our right-handed pitchers get destroyed by left-handed hitters. From the other side, the Mets have a lot of right-handed hitters. I've never been one to do the righty-lefty platoon. I'm always like, okay, just give me the best hitter in that scenario. But when you talk about the Mets as left-handed hitters, you have Nimmo, you have McNeil. Is there anybody else? I mean, nobody else.
Not
I mean,
really.
that's it.
I mean,
Not
Lindor's
really.
a switch
So
hitter, so that's about it.
exactly, Lindor's the switch hitter. I mean, right now it's weird as to where they would kind of plug him in. I don't want to see this thing as a platoon situation because I want to have JD Martinez in the mix every time. And could you platoon the corner outfield? Like, I don't know how they want to look at it. And there is one guy I do want to discuss in my top 5, which we'll get into later. That can kind of like settle things out, but it almost kind of takes away from this equation as to putting him into the mix. But with Jesse Winker, I don't know how they're going to kind of. I mean, Marte, we'd like for him to play 4 every 5 days, obviously, because he's being paid to do that. But I feel like you do. I mean, it's a good problem to have, of course. But I feel like putting him in these scenarios, which he thrives in, like the one today, I'm kind of confused as to where this combination plays out day to day, and I'm confused. Like, I am a little confused because it depends on the situation. I feel like with a lot of these outfielders, we know Nimmo is the everyday guy, but as for everybody else, the days off, the versatility, the ability, it's kind of weird to me. I don't know how you feel about this, but it's just, I feel like it's a surplus, but also very situational at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like the thing that kind of is really factoring into well is the age part of it. So with Marte just coming back from injury, in addition to his age, I feel like he's playing, like you said, maybe 2 of 3, 3 of 5 or 4. So on that one day off, you could pencil Winker in. We know JD Martinez does not play on Sundays. The games are too early. The old man can't get up. So that's a Winker day right there, probably on a Sunday for JD. And then, so I think between Marte and Martinez getting days off, that's where you plug Jesse Winker in. And I feel like with Winker and Martinez, you're going to see these guys kind of floated around as pinch hitters in certain situations. Like you've seen Martinez pinch hit when they're down on a Sunday or something. Like he did this past Sunday. Like that's something that can happen. You also factor in the days that you want to maybe get Iglesias in the lineup and you put McNeil in the outfield. That's another left-handed outfielder technically, so you could put him out there one day if you want to. And then Taylor, you're gonna use him as a defensive replacement, but also start for Bader. And I think that going forward, you could look at something potentially of you let Bader walk, and then do you have Drew Gilbert go out there and say, "I hope you can hit," and just have a
Speaking of Drew
defensive
Gilbert,
center
he just
fielder.
homered, by the way.
Oh, there you go. So have a defensive outfielder who's left-handed, and then as far as your overall lineup, Mauricio is in the mix at somewhere. That's a left-handed back because he's a switch hitter. So you have a couple of internal options you could plug in, and then if you get Santander or Kyle Tucker or Juan Soto, all of those guys can bat left-handed. So there are ways to address that. But I think for right now, considering age, injury history, I don't think we're going to get a big Winker playing time unless he goes like ridiculously hot. But I think, it'll kind of, as the experts say, work its way out, and you'll just kind of find those little spots here and there we will be playing. I don't think it's going to be big playing time, but I think that he is perfectly capable of being a guy that pinch hits. Just look to what he did to our July 4th, where he pinch hit against us and he hits the big home run to win the game. So it's something that he can do. It's not something everybody can do. Francisco Alvarez pinch hit today, what they say is 0 for 20 or 0 for 21 when pitch hitting. Like, not everyone can do that. It's kind of a skill in a certain sense, just to come off cold and just swing the bat. So that's another thing that he can do for you as a bench player. So, at least they have guys who kind of fill each other's weaknesses in a certain extent. Like, Winker's not good defensively, so that's where Taylor fits in. So, they have a good mix. I think overall, talk about like assembling a bench and having depth, but I feel like you'll just find those bits and pieces to kind of plug them in.
Yeah, Taylor is another situation I feel like that is very odd because, you know, I did see somebody in the chat. I don't know who it was, but saying Taylor should play more. This is Ken
Mm-hmm.
coming in saying that, and I feel like we always get into these situations with Taylor as to where we're like, okay, this guy should play more, and then he plays more, and then we're like, okay, this guy should play less. Like I feel like we get into that kind of situation with Taylor as to where I don't know if they can find the right dose of him for him to be an actual like good contributor. And that's kind of just what you get from a fourth outfielder, but he's played the fourth outfielder role fairly well. When you look at the outfield of maybe it is a little bit of a log jam as to where, is is Jesse Winker somebody who just comes off the bench in pinch hitting situations against right-handed relievers because that's what he's kind of thrived off of. They do have that flexibility as to where they can play the platoons later in the games. We've seen
Well,
them
you
do that
could. Well, I
recently.
mean, and you could do what you did today is like you could pinch hit for Bader because Bader's
Yeah,
right-handed, and then Taylor comes in for Winker. But like you're technically
yeah,
swapping out Bader for Taylor in a defensive sense. So like I
yeah,
feel like because of that, they have ways that it kind of works out. But what comes tough though is that we're talking about pinch hitting the right-handed hitters, like we've talked about this before, but you're not pinch hitting Lindor or Vientos or
yeah,
Alonso or Marte or Martinez or Alvarez. So it's like you're left with only a few guys that could actually get pinch hit for.
yeah. And of course, the bottom of the lineup, again, it can be very interchangeable because we've talked about how good they've been situationally as compared to the top of the lineup, which has been very, not bad, but it's just been very streaky with runners on. Let's just say that situationally. And
And
hopefully
it's
they clean
been
that up eventually.
they've been fluctuating it a lot lately. I feel like
Yeah,
the 3, 4, 5 is like different every day right now. Like
yeah,
Nimmo batting fourth thought was interesting. I don't know if I
yeah.
necessarily love it, but not when he's struggling. I feel like he's done so good in RBI situations that I understand the thought process, but I feel like when he's struggling, I don't know if that's necessarily the best spot.
Yeah, I mean he's picked it up a little bit these past few games. He did get us back into the game before the 3-run homer by JD Martinez as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's another guy that has always been a good situational hitter, but of course he has been struggling, and that's just kind of how it has been. And I think that we'll see what happens. And again, I really want to see a point as to where the top of this lineup they all get hot at the same time and they all contribute at the same time and they're all, giving you extra base hits and all driving in runs. But, you kind of just see that seesaw a little bit off. I mean, you've seen, Lindor be one of the main contributors. I mean, he, again, like I said, just carrying this team on his back recently, especially since the All-Star break where he started off a little slow in the second half, but then he got it back together and he's on pace for 30-30 once again. And just overall, and again, I think again, um, speaking of just overall contributors, I mean, one of the right moves, and we talked about it already, but one of the right moves, just moving Vientos to that 2 spot. I think that at this point he has earned it. We've always talked about Pete being the second hitter, like batting second as well. I mean, Vientos has done Pete's job better than Pete this year. So right now, he should be getting the most ABs because that's what he's been able to do situationally. And just overall, as a power threat, he's really just been, I mean, a revelation to this line and making it deeper than it already is. And, when Pete's not helping himself when he has all this power protection these days, now you got to have Pete protect other players. I mean, it stinks to be that type of reality right now because we've seen for 5 years now where he had no protection whatsoever. But the thing is that right now you gotta kind of like, I don't know if it's just like riding the hot hand, but they have a consistent formula that they have to find out. I mean, I'm fine if you put Nimmo third. Like I'm okay with that behind Vientos, because I just feel like Vientos is just, he's too hot right now. To take him out of that two spot right now, and and it all really has to do with you know right now, and people in the chat have been talking about the Padres getting absolutely destroyed right now, which is good to see. That's great for the Mets
Braves have the
going
bases
in.
loaded right now with 2 outs, 0-2 count.
But then we kind of have to psychoanalyze this a little bit, because they're going to get angry, and then they're going to take it out on us tomorrow. And all right, but other than that, let's just say Mark is coming in here as well, saying that, okay, what will Pete do in this upcoming Padres series? Will he string together a good few games, or will he continue the same way he's been all season? That's another question that has to be answered, and it's going to be answered pretty quickly with somebody like Pete Alonso, because we have seen him just constantly get into these streaks where, yeah, he has a good game. He gets like these things sprinkled in and out, but overall, just with runners in scoring position, he just has not been himself. He just has not been the main contributor that he was, and that is going to be a main piece as to where keeping this offense consistent, which they've really struggled to do. They really, it all really just lines at Pete Alonso. I mean, we've talked about the offense going through him. The offense is deeper now, but we'll see what happens going into the series against the Padres. We'll talk about that in a second, but I do want to get into my top 5, which I for those of you who have not watched us before or listened to us before, occasionally I like to do these little top 5 lists as to where my head's at with a certain category. I do it like just to keep the show fresh a little bit, sprinkle it in and out. And then everybody else on the panel gets to kind of tear it apart. People in the chat can let me know of their opinions and whatever. And I just basically just give my top 5. Now, the main reason as to why I am taking this out of the book here is because of something that is coming up in the process of next week, towards the end of next week. We're about 10 days away from it as to where September call-ups happen. And the Mets right now are at a point where the roster is pretty deep. And right now, with this situation, you get one pitcher and one position player as the rosters expand to 28 now. It used to be the entire 40-man roster gets called up. It is a crowded dugout. Everybody is there. But when you talk about it now, a lot of decisions do have to be made. And so I have 5 players that I believe will help the deepen of this roster, and I do have some decent thoughts about it. Some of them I'm very high on. Some of them I'm not. I'm just talking about them as to plugging them into the roster. So here is my top 5 players to call up on September 1st. Now, I'm going to start this one off with number 5, of course, work our way up, and that being Luis Angel Acuna. Now, obviously, being the returning piece for Max Scherzer at the trade deadline, Ronald's baby brother has been somewhat disappointing at the AAA level in 2024, only posting a 676 OPS and 30 extra base hits across 492 plate appearances. So why give him a chance? Well, when it all comes down to is basically what this team inconsistently uses. That just being tools. And that's basically what you get from a player like Luis Angel Acuna. Great speed on the base pass, swiping 32 bags this season. Defensive versatility at second base, shortstop, outfield, plus range with an average arm. Now listen, I am not big on Acuna, but he still does have tools to be a marginal player and give this roster some deep outfield and infield depth, and also just deep in the bench overall. The Mets only have one backup infielder on the active roster, so it makes sense to strengthen the depth up the middle, which is one of the main points of emphasis with David Stearns. Just defense up the middle and making that part of the team a little bit deeper. Now let's get into number 4, that being Blade Tidwell, the former second round pick by the Mets. Has struggled in AAA across 60 innings pitched, posting a 5.55 earned run average, a 6.94 fielding independent pitching, striking out just 19.2% of batters. Now, we all know how I feel about AAA hitting environment. And even though it's a horrible measurement of ability, Tidwell has been really bad. But on the plus side, a majority of his struggles have come from his control, walking 14.7% of batters, and it really has kept him from going deep into games. Even though I do think that there is some starter upside for Tidwell going forward, I personally think this would be a good time to ramp him up in the bullpen at the major league level. The walk problems are there, but there's good secondary swing and miss stuff, a mid-90s fastball that still can touch 98 with over 17 inches of induced vertical break, high spin cutter with arm side action to left-handed hitters, sweeping action slider with extra horizontal break, a low running sinker, a side spinning changeup, and the occasional curveball. Now, he's very rough around the edges this year, but he does have some data that still merits my intrigue to give him a look in September. Probably won't happen, but it is a call that I would make to kind of deepen the possibilities, especially with somebody like Jose Quintana, who's giving you 3 to 4 innings every 5 days. Long relief, bulk guy, best way to kind of ramp him up. Now, this one's going to be a little bit unconventional, but let me explain. Number 3, Jackie Bradley Jr. About a month ago, the Mets signed JBJ to a minor league deal after he tore it up with the Independent League's Long Island Ducks, one of our favorite teams here. We're huge fans. And Frank has he's a season ticket holder. He loves them. Now, why is a 34-year-old Jackie Bradley Jr. on my list? Well, it's pretty simple. The defense of Marte and Winker at the corners is still a massive concern. And now, with Nimmo nursing his shoulder, this pretty much only gives you one viable center field option, being Harrison Bader. Even though Tyrone Taylor can play center field, he hasn't been great at it recently, and he pretty much provides the most value in the corners with his strong arm. This would most likely put 6 outfielders on the 28-man roster. But the Mets have 4 outfielders on the roster that most likely cannot operate center field consistently down the stretch this season. We all know Stearns' preference to have defense straight away, and that's what JBJ provides still at age 34. You also get tons of postseason experience that JBJ had with Boston. It's pretty much like Luis Angel Acuna, where you call him up to fill in the margins. But when you have a deep roster like they do, that's almost all you really need come September with a player like Jackie Bradley Jr. Number 2, Tyler Zuber. Now, over this year's trade deadline, Zuber was acquired by the Mets from Tampa in exchange for minor league pitcher Paul Gervais. Out of the bullpen in the minors, Zuber has posted a 2.70 earned run average, a 2.64 fielding independent pitching, striking out 31.4% of batters across 26.2 innings pitched. He's a 3-pitch right-handed pitcher with some great pitch shape and secondary stuff. Mid-90s fastball that touches 97 with over 16 inches of induced vertical break, a riding action high-spin sweeper, and a hybrid cutter in the low 90s. Great swing and miss stuff. He manages contact well. He doesn't walk many, and I think that he would be a solid middle reliever down the stretch for this team. He's a fresh arm to add to the bullpen with some upside. I know we all have the execution concerns with the coaching regarding of the talent, but you can never have enough pitching going into a playoff race. It is just a number 1 need. Getting into number 1, even though he has had yet another rough outing in AAA, Brandon Sproat. Now, last year's second round pick by the Mets has been nearly unstoppable this season, posting a 2.55 earned run average, a 1.89 fielding independent pitching, striking out 31.3% of batters across 95.1 innings pitched. That is fluctuated before the start he had just had. But the flame-throwing right-hander has pitched across 3 different levels this year. And even though he has struggled in his AAA debut as well as today, the stuff still plays. He has a high 90s fastball that can touch 101 miles an hour with over 20 inches of induced vertical break, an arm side cutter in the high 80s, a hard screwball style cutting changeup, a high spin slider in the low 80s, a dropping hammer curveball with extra drop, and a high 90 sinker with monstrous glove side run. I understand there's no rust to the majors, but with pitchers, we have to kind of look at the situation at hand. An arm like this does play in the postseason, whether you think he's ready or not. In prerequisite fashion, Sproat has yet to undergo Tommy John surgery. I'm not a doctor. I don't think he's going to get Tommy John surgery yet, but you do not waste these types of bullets in the minor leagues. I don't know whether they want to plug him into the rotation or in the bullpen down the stretch, but I think that he's earned his spot this year. I don't care about the AAA performances. Just prevent the ticking time bomb as much as you can with his health. I believe that Sproat does belong up here, even though he has just struggled in AAA. Again, that hitting environment completely fluctuates everything. Everything you make contact with is a home run in that level. So there's my top 5 of players that I would call up at September 1st. You may notice that there is one player that's not on here that most likely will be called up, that being Brett Baty. Now, Brett Baty is in this certain situation as to where he's kind of just the next man up. He's kind of the 27th man right now. And I personally think that he does not deserve that whatsoever. And we all know my feelings about Baty, but I do believe that he has not earned this call up in September. And even though he most likely will be called up, he's going to be one of the guys to expand it to 28. I know that's going to happen. And even though they, again, like I said, with the Acuna situation, we only have one backup infielder as of right now on this roster. So it's most likely going to be an infielder. Could you put Luke Ritter into the mix, who has hit very well in the minor leagues as well? Sure. Go ahead, do that if you want to. But with Brett Baty, I'm seeing a lot of as to where he has been hitting well in AAA. He's had a few good streaks. He's been doing well in AAA, and he deserves another chance. Here's the deal with that. He has had over 600 plate appearances at the major league level. What more do you need? Vientos has had way less than that. And he's proven that he believes that he's proven that he belongs here. So as of right now, even if Vientos was struggling, it probably would be a different conversation. But with Brett Baty, for absolutely no reason at all, do I believe that he should be up here on September 1st. Will he be? Yes, he absolutely will be. And in fact, to rub salt into the wound again, especially with how Quintana has been pitching, I would not be surprised if it's Baty and McGill that got called up to expand the roster. Wouldn't be surprised. And listen, I think that when you talk about it as to in this sense, Mark is coming in with a point here, saying that I think Baty should be allowed to come up for the purposes of showcasing him for a trade in the offseason. Here's the deal here with Baty. Trade purposes. He's going to make it worse if he comes up here in the majors because he's not a major league hitter. And I say this, and I'm not saying this to just like full on overreact here. I'm not doing that. I'm going to tell you right now, I see absolutely nothing in Brett Baty. I'm not even joking. Brett Baty is terrible. Like, he actually is not good whatsoever. There's nothing encouraging about Brett Baty that has been shown at the major league level that tells me, oh, this guy is going to start doing and start contributing. He's not going to showcase anything. He's going to showcase that he's not a major league player. We don't want that to other teams. We just want to pawn him off somewhere else, with Mark Vientos playing well and running away with the job. So with Brett Baty, with that thought in hand, I understand everyone would say, well, we gave Vientos this time. Vientos can contribute. And, he struggled. Well, Vientos didn't even get a chance. Not to mention, Vientos also has an actual hitting foundation. He hits the ball hard, hits the ball in the air. He doesn't chase. He had a hitting foundation that could improve. Brett Baty doesn't. Brett Baty, every single one of his hitting tools are horrendous. They've been horrendous at the major league level. Vientos has proven himself in less time than Brett Baty, and I just don't think that they should entertain that, even though it's going to happen. But my top 5 here, let me know what you think of it. I'll pop it up again. Give me your full-on thoughts, Frank. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see a case for all these guys. I like how you talked about with Acuna, that positional versatility has value. I believe also the speed coming off of the bench has value. But a couple of names that I think, this is just me. I'm not saying that these guys should be in top 5, but I'd say just other things to consider from a strategic standpoint, just from lineup versatility, not really lineup versatility, but just kind of other options while managing. I'm not totally against the idea of potentially carrying a third catcher if you don't have like another like knockdown hitter that's just awesome, because I feel like there are certain instances where maybe you want to pinch hit Alvarez when he has a day off, but you don't want him to catch, or maybe you want to do a pinch runner for Alvarez or Torrens, but you can't because you don't want the other guy to come in to catch. I just feel like having that as another option would not be the worst thing in the world, because with Acuna, you're looking at it and you're like, well, he's going to get up here to play around the field, run, but can he hit? We don't know yet. We don't know how that's going to translate to the major league level. So I'm not sure if he's where I'd go. I think if I'm looking for a versatility guy that could kind of do it all and has a little bit more on the major league level, I look maybe more of the Mike Brasso direction. I feel like that's someone I could throw into consideration. I saw some people mentioning Eddie Rosario. It's a left-handed bat, but he just hasn't been all that great on the major league level this season. That I think only if there's injuries I would do that. I'm with you on Baty. I just don't think there's much there. But from the pitching standpoint, I totally agree. Give me Blade or give me Sproat. I've said it over and over. I just want to see what they're at, where they're at. I just kind of want to see like how does this stuff translate to the major league level, because if they're telling me that you can't call up Blade because he walks batters and has high pitch counts, do you not watch what happens just about every single day on this major league team? I mean, you mean to tell me that that's not exactly what Quintana is doing? I mean, at least give me the young guy that has some upside and has some stuff that we could work on it and just kind of get those major league reps for improvement. When we talk about long-term player development, give me that instead. So I don't want to hear this, oh, we can't, he's walking guys. So does everybody on the whole team. I mean, what difference does it make? At least give me talent. At least give me stuff, upside. So I'm okay with that. And then for Sproat, I've been saying it constantly, but yeah, give it a chance, because when you're behind and the trade deadline's over, where's the talent gonna come from? Yeah. Because it's clear that what you have right now is not getting the job done. It's not enough. So you gotta reach in and go grab something, because it's like you said, with Sproat and pitchers, high velocity, the Tommy John is bound to happen. So if he's healthy now, use him now. Because then what happens is he gets hurt in spring training, he's done, and you didn't use him last year, so you just wasted it. So it's like, if you have Senga down already, you have to use your best available options. And like we said earlier, Quintana just shouldn't be an option right now. So I just don't understand why they're tied to. And I don't know why you have to wait until September to do that. You can do it now. You should do it now, because it's just really tough to watch on the daily basis. And, all the names you mentioned, like Jackie Bradley, defense, left-handed, fine. Zuber, you want to give me another bullpen arm? I'm good with that. If that makes it a little more palatable to maybe consider bullpen games, fine. But
Yeah.
I'll give you one more. What if they call up Nunez and they just leave Ottavino as the extra man? How about something like that?
I
How,
mean,
how would you feel about that?
all I can say is there would be massive concern if Nunez is here in 9 days. Let's just say that. I would be a lot more concerned about Nunez in that situation. Another thing where you were talking about adding in a third catcher, the only thing is that there's a lot of concern with the minor leagues and their catchers because they have Joe Hudson, I believe, who was injured, and Hayden
Mhm.
Senger, who's also injured.
Yeah.
So they do have two catchers in AAA right now. I think Matt O'Neill or something. He was like called up to AAA or something. But they have like Logan Porter and Austin Allen. Like
Yeah,
Allen's
you'd
not
be
the
calling up
best. Yeah,
Logan Porter just as like
probably. Yeah,
just like
yeah.
catch, but I don't know.
I think
I
it's a
mean,
major league
it's
contract he has. So
yeah,
which
it's
is
tough
weird.
because yeah,
Yeah.
it is really tough because it depends on what his defense like. And that's kind of where it stinks not having Nito. At least knowing that you have a major league defensive eligible catcher, because you don't want to do the pinch running and then you just bring up a guy who hasn't worked with any of these pitchers at all. Maybe isn't great defensively behind the plate, so you don't want to lose that. You know what you're getting from Alvarez and Torrens. So from that standpoint, it doesn't work. But I think in the future, it's something that I think they could use as far as just like a third option, because God forbid if an injury did happen to one of those two guys, I mean that's who the next man up is. So they and listen, Alvarez has been playing, as we know, through some injuries, through the hand issue, through the shoulder issue, and they had Narvaez here who wasn't great, but they also had Nito here, and now both of them are gone. So I just feel like going forward, it should be something they're experimenting with, and I think also if you're going to be keeping your top pitching guys like Sproat, like Blade in AAA, I would like if they had like a really nice veteran catcher in AAA that was working with these guys, that was kind of helping them out as they're developing. You know, I feel like that would also be really valuable for them.
I mean, listen, I think again, Christian Scott right now. I mean, this being
He's
mentioned,
hurt, so
he's not a factor
he's
right
not
now.
he's
So
not in the mix.
and most likely he won't pitch for the rest of the season. There's a strong possibility
Yeah,
that doesn't happen because again, they always had the injury concerns with him, kind of
it's an arm
bringing him
arm
into the
injury
mix.
too.
Yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
it's tough. It's UCL. Like you can't rush that. It's just not something to mess around with.
I think a lot of people are going after Scott because they've seen him give up a few home runs in pretty much every single one of his starts. Like he's struggled,
Mm-hmm.
yes, he has, but I think that there are adjustments that need to be made as to where he's there, but there's still upside there as to where you can give him a little bit time, and hopefully he's a little bit healthier and ramps it up. And listen, if they can't push it, they can't push it because again there's a concern with workload with him, and then you add this injury on top of it. I mean, he's become kind of a non-factor currently. He's just not a choice right now. We don't even know if, I mean, Senga, the best case scenario is if he pitches in the playoffs. That's
Gotta
not going to
get it
help us right
first.
now. And Joey Lucchesi again is another guy as to where he's not even on the 40 man anymore.
Yeah, he's not on the 40
You know?
man. That just tells they're
He's still
trying
with
to
the
get rid of him.
organization,
Like
but he's not. Like,
yeah, like they
don't give a
and
shit
that's the
about him
thing.
anymore.
If they DFA'd Lucchese and nobody took him, that kind of says where he's at right now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I think when you talk about just like somebody like Lucchesi, you're kind of just getting you're just filling in the exact same thing that you're getting with Quintana, pretty much. Just a guy who's going to just labor through 4 innings, 5 innings, not going to go deep into the game. Sometimes he'll tip the pitches. It's just like there's just so much pinpoint that has to happen for him to do well. I think the thing is that right now the rotation is in a place where yes, there are internal options that could be pieces down the line, but right now talking about like actual established pieces, I think that it's very weird as to where like there's guys in AAA that like were prospects, but they're just not panning it out in AAA, and they've been there. I mean, even though I talk about like AAA like having such a grain of salt, they've been there for like all year. Like they've been there all year. So right now it's kind of just been put into calling a spade as to where maybe they can handle it. Maybe they just don't pan out. A Dom Hamill, Mike Vassell, or even Blade Tidwell, if you're talking about that. But I feel like they need to find a way as to where stuff plays. If you're talking about just like an overall hitter, I think that they're probably good with that as to where, you can bring in a guy like JBJ who we know doesn't contribute with the offense. So I feel like the problem that we face right now is there's a lack of it's not like there's a lack of viable options. There's options. There's just a lack of viable options. Like right now, you have guys on a list as to where, there's some relievers here, but none of them have really hit like that list as to where like Tyler Zuber or Matt Gage, guys like that, they most likely are like at the top of that list right now because they have major league experience and they also have some upside as an arm. Then you get down to like the other pieces where it's like who have been up here for a little bit and they haven't been good. Eric Horsey, you get to the other pieces as to where, Grant Hartwig, who's been injured and has struggled many times. I mean, they have like kind of a tier as to where there's a few guys who are ready to take on a major league assignment. There's just a lot of options where they just don't know. They don't know. And that's the problem. And there's a possibility as to where Matt Gage, like a guy like that, comes up because they don't have.
You
a
could
second
see
lefty right
Alex
now.
Young coming back up. I mean,
It could
he
happen.
did.
That
I mean, he
could
got
happen
kind of
as well.
a raw deal, just kind of being sent down just for the sake of the amount of people on the roster.
I mean, and listen, I think, there's a lot more discourse about Scott, I think, right now. I think that he's going to be a fine pitcher again. Yeah. Like, I don't think he's going to be this bad as to where, he's giving up costly
pitches right
homes.
now. Like, he needs to
yeah,
add
he
to
needs
his
more.
arsenal.
Yeah, he needs to add some stuff.
Different.
He needs to make a lot of adjustments. And, Marcus coming in and talking about, like, beware of the propaganda about these pitchers when you hear about high velo or stuff like that. And so they talk about stuff like how they aggressively pound the zone. It doesn't mean shit if there's no knowledge of location. That is true. But if you're talking about command, if you're talking about hitting an actual spot, you're talking about the wrong guy with Christian Scott. Christian Scott has phenomenal command.
He's like the only pitcher in the whole rotation that doesn't.
And that's the thing as to where.
Yeah. Like, listen, if you want Scott to stop giving home runs, he could just walk the ballpark like the rest of these guys do.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, let the guy develop.
Like, you can't have it either way. So it's like, these guys are walking all these guys. Oh, they're walking. They're bringing up all these base runners. Well, let's get somebody who throws strikes. Oh, well, this guy's throwing strikes. He's giving up home runs. You can't have it both ways. You can't. So. I'm currently at a situation as to where figure it out. Like Christian Scott, I'm letting this guy get his leash, get his innings in, get that experience, and he will eventually adjust to it. But right now, he's not a factor. So I don't think there's really much reasons as to why you need to unload on him at all. Like, yes, I'd rather somebody have a home run problem than a walk problem. Because that is more what a starting pitcher has. Some spotty location. If the guy can't get the ball over the plate, he moves to the bullpen. It's not just the starter struggles, let's move him to the bullpen. Control and command, two different things of the same coin. That's something that you don't need to worry about with Christian Scott. That's something that will eventually adjust in the major leagues. He has to get those innings in. But right now, he's just not really part of that equation. That's the current point that we're at. Where, yes, he has struggled. He's had some tough outings, but what does that even mean right now? I mean, he's not even an option. He's injured. They can't use him right now. So, speaking of players that can't use,
I'd like to see that. Something they can kind of keep down in the zone, because a lot of times the lefties, once he's elevating, it's on a tee and it's gone. He needs to try to generate ground
He
balls because
needs.
lower that fly balls. I would think something like that would be
Well, he's
that
got
he
the
could add.
splitter. What is it?
Yeah,
Splitter, sweeper, and then the
slider,
running
sweeper, four
fastball.
seam. Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably
And
either a
his sweeper and
sinker.
splitter coming at the same speed, basically. So
He probably
that's
needs like he probably needs something. He needs something to run to the glove side. That's kind of what he
yeah.
needs. He's an arm side pitcher, but
Mhm.
then he's also going to need something to tunnel with that. So it probably is like the need of like a sinker with glove side run, and then probably would have to add a cutter in there as well.
Yep.
So I mean, there's some things he's got to add to it, and hopefully he does deepen. We've seen
And,
other
and,
pitchers
and
add some stuff
listen,
to their arsenal.
and here
Yeah,
is maybe the silver lining is that if Jeremy Hefner does go and David Stearns could bring in a new pitching coach, it's like Stearns plus pitching. All of a sudden, you could like develop pitchers and they become
that'd be
better.
nice,
It's
wouldn't
a
it?
crazy thing that Milwaukee does, and like Frankie Montas doing really good now when he was doing bad in
Yeah,
Cincinnati. It's a pretty crazy concept, like to improve players, but it's something that could happen. Maybe, I hope.
yeah, it would be nice. I would like to see that happen. But I mean, what? Why would you get rid of your golden boy of the organization? I mean, that's just stupid. But speaking of guys who aren't available, like Christian Scott, let's talk about the injury report real quick. I shouldn't say not available because Brandon Nimmo is available. He left Sunday's game versus the Marlins with right shoulder discomfort. The imaging showed that there is no structural damage. He returned to the Mets lineup on Tuesday after sitting on Monday, and he's day-to-day at this current moment. Obviously, they kind of played into a factor with him dropping that fly ball. Maybe there was a little bit of hesitance there, but overall, right now, Brandon Nimmo is healthy. He avoided the worst-case scenario, so that is good. Danel Nunez made a rehab appearance for AAA Syracuse on Tuesday night. He is expected to rejoin the Mets bullpen this week after just one appearance. It looks like they're giving him about a few days of rest, so you could expect him to join the team on the West Coast road trip, and he might be a part of the bullpen going down in this very crucial part of the schedule against the Padres and the Diamondbacks. Remember Kyle Crick? Well, that guy just began a rehab assignment for Low A Port St. Lucie on Tuesday afternoon. He did have a high-grade calf strain that got him transferred to the 60-day injured list all the way back in March. And, of course, we all know that he signed a minor league deal with the Mets this offseason, one of the first moves that was made. So maybe it is another option for the bullpen going down the line, but that is another piece that began a rehab assignment and is getting healthy. So that is pretty good. Good to know. Let's get into studs and duds, everybody's favorite segment. Lots of good, lots of bad. Frank, I'll go to you for your stud of this series.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a lot of guys that you could pick, but I'm going to give it to someone who I'm glad finally did some good things. That's JD Martinez. He hit a couple of home runs in the series. He did have some ground balls, but he was just overall hitting the ball harder. And I think
Yeah.
that's really what we need to see from him. We've had concerns about the power really missing, not getting the ball over the fence and just not having the greatest of at bats, not good quality of contact. So I like that we saw some home run went the other way. The home run here was definitely a big one in that second game to get them into the game. So that was big, and then they threw the ball around. But I think just overall, if they could get a little bit more consistent power from him, that could really go a long way. Being their DH, where he bats in the lineup, that could really be a big help if they can get him kind of rolling again.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's definitely looked better. Hopefully he can get back into the thick of things because we're most likely counting on him to be the cleanup hitter now, especially with a lot of consistency coming from Lindor and Vientos. You hope that you can get a little bit more from him. I mean, I got to go with Mark Vientos on this one. I mean, he really has just continued to be, and I feel like we're doing this like every single time. But I mean, he really has just been the most consistent bat since he was called up. And he just continues to be in the thick of everything, whether it is getting this team back in the game, getting these extra base hits, the situational hitting, like we've said, the two-strike hitting. It's been great. And I mean, another guy I can put out there is Lindor, because Lindor, again, he's just been putting the team on his back. You can put Alvarez as well, getting that big hit in the first game. But I mean, I got to go with I mean, Vientos has just been
You could put
so.
Winker in there.
You could put Winker in there too for the big moment, of course. And then that celebration, that was just a stud celebration. Let's just say that. For those of you who did not enjoy the celebration, thought it was a little too excessive, I think it wasn't excessive enough, to be honest. I think he should have celebrated more.
I was a little surprised with the
Yeah.
stop walking to first base, like the flat out just like full stop. I was like a
I
little
expect
surprised. But it's okay.
nothing. I expect nothing more, nothing less from Jesse Winker. I mean, that guy again, and I've talked about it even before he was a Met. Like I like the guy. I think he's funny. I think he's a funny guy. Like I think he's entertaining. Like he has fun playing the game of baseball. Like those are the types of guys that you want. And even though he had that whole arc with us at the beginning in 2019 or whatever, he has fun, and he talked about it. It's good to be on this side now and have like the fans roaring behind him instead of booing him and going after him. Now, speaking of booing and going after, there is one guy that I feel like both of us pretty much can just put out here as the dud, because he is the clear dud of this series. Do you know what direction I'm going in, or do you want me to prompt you?
I have a general idea. I mean, we almost spent like an hour talking about him, so I mean, we don't need to add much. I'll just add like a couple more things. So just everything about his start kind of sucked. I mean, the amount of hits, the amount of runs, but even it's like when you're looking at like walks to strikeouts, like 2 walks to 3 strikeouts, that's just really problematic. 90 pitches to get through 5 innings. And one of the other things I was looking at with him is that even a good start for Quintana, like let's say against Colorado or the Yankees, where he went 5 in, where he gave up 1 run against the Yankees. He only went 5 innings. He's doing 94 pitches. So it's like even when he doesn't give up a lot of runs, he still is not going to be able to go deep into games. It got off to a good start against Seattle, but it ended up not really getting the job done with how bad the offense was. So I just think overall, I still that's the thing that really bothers me the most is I just don't see the scenario where he is productive with the current stuff that he has. That's kind of where like my main critique is that I'm like, oh, it's not like he's young and he's got a good fastball, and like I could see where they could do some tweaks and he could get it going. I just don't see that right now. I just feel like there's just a lot of things wrong, just everything wrong. You can't walk batters and you can't go home runs. And he's doing both those things. Like he's doing the things that you absolutely can't, both of them. So I just think overall, like we said, it's every 5 days. It's just very tough to watch.
Yeah. The deal with Quintana, I mean, I was already out on. I mean, we've had the concern like throughout all of it. Just how the stuff plays and how he's just been laboring the entire year. And then he gives up a home run to James McCann, and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm finished. Now I'm finished.
That was crazy.
That
with a mask on.
As soon as that left the bat, I was like, okay, we're done here now. You are getting on my shit list now. Like this is bad. This is getting really, really bad. I mean, the fact that he does that in his first game returning to Citi Field. Was that his first home run in Citi Field?
I don't think so, but it's one of the very few.
No, it's not. But I'm but like, I really, I'm done. Like that's the nail in the coffin for me. After that happened, the guy could pitch a perfect game the next time he pitches. I will still want him gone. I'm guaranteeing you that. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't know what to say. And then listen, there's other guys we can put in, like if you want to kind of dissect a little bit, you want to put Mendoza in there, fine. I get it. There's some confusing moves that he has made. It's been a rough week for Mendoza. Let's just say that. That's yeah. Brazaban has struggled a little bit. That is true.
The defense in the 9th inning yesterday, like just to give the overall embarrassment of like, okay, you make errors on the field, that happens. But when it becomes all over, like online, you're just seeing everyone like, what a mess, meet the mess. Like when you're just seeing just like, it looked like literally just third base to catcher to third, and nobody could catch a ball. Like
Yeah.
that is just unacceptable. You know, you're
Yeah.
trying to be a playoff team. You can't
And
be
they've
doing
had a
stuff
few
like that.
sequences like that this
They
year.
have, and it seems
And
like
you're
it's
like,
happening a
okay,
little
well,
more recently, where it's
yeah,
just like the
yeah.
ball, like Nemo's grabbing it, and it goes somewhere else, and then the guy doesn't back up, and then you had the play too, where Francisco Alvarez is falling on his face, and Vientos isn't covering home, and then you have like Alonso cut off the second baseman,
Yeah,
like it's just a lot of that, like lack of communication is very concerning for a major league team. Like no
lots
one
of
seems to know
exhales,
like
let's
where
just
they're
say.
supposed to be.
Lots of exhales, let's just say, with this defense sometimes. And sometimes they make great plays, and sometimes they just there's like the momentum shift, especially with last night in the game, in the second game of this. I mean, that play, I don't know what the fuck happened there. That was
Yeah,
just that was
it
horrendous.
was
That just
crazy.
that took the air out of the entire stadium. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they're like after that happened, tons of fans left because that was horrendous. I mean, they were down a lot in that game. Thank you, Jose Quintana, but I mean, they got back into it. It was a 2-run game, and then they give it right back. Like they just give it right back, and it was so it was deflating. It really was, because even though there were, I will say that the umpiring crew was very questionable throughout this
Oh
entire
yes, for
series.
sure. Especially, I mean, the call with Budo.
But
That was
I'm not
brutal.
here to just blame them. I've never been one to go after the umpires for like strike and ball calls because of how pitches move. Things are borderline. It happens.
No,
But like
I
that
mean,
one with Budo, that was
mhm.
woo,
Because
that
it was
was
two outs
brutal.
there. It was
That
two
was
outs
bad. Yeah, they cost us 2 outs there. It cost
and
us
a
the
run.
tying run eventually.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think
yeah,
with
it's the human
Quintana,
element.
like
It happens, but you know.
yeah, Quintana gave up 8 hits. Umpire can't do anything about that, so it's
Yeah,
not gonna make a
exactly.
difference. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, the umpires
the
don't make you throw
umpire.
the ball over the field. Like that's just
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I
and
mean,
even like the balk on Peterson, like that was just I don't know, that was
yeah,
weird. Just like just a lot of weird stuff, and even with Manaya, when he has the perfect game going, 2 strikes hit by pitch. I hate
yeah.
2 strike hit by pitches. You know that. Like, and
I
then
don't.
like
I
just homer
really
right
just
after.
personally don't understand
I don't
even
know.
throwing a fastball at that current moment, especially just like
Yeah,
just I understand challenging a young kid.
especially the young hitter. Like you have that nice sweeper in your back pocket, lefty lefty. I feel like that needs to be your out pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you should have gone to the secondary stuff, especially with the Jackson Holiday, a hitter that was kind of really struggling in this series. Like he was
Mm-hmm.
not doing well. But I mean, those are just kind of like those little nitpicks. But overall, I mean, Manaya has been. I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
he's been
he's been
locked
great.
down. I mean, he really has.
Great.
And even if he is not giving you a amazing quality performance, he's giving you length, and that was one thing that we were really concerned about with him overall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
0 walks. 0 walks.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
big for
I
this
mean,
staff.
no walks. Exactly. Commit.
Against that lineup.
Yeah, against that lineup too,
Yeah.
which they do have a lot of guys who know how to get on base on that lineup. Not to mention, also, I was a little concerned. I was a little bit concerned going into this series because they did put is it 3 lefties we put on the mound here?
Yes. All three lefties.
3
Yep.
lefties. Baltimore is the best team in all of baseball against left-handed pitching. So, I mean, I was a little bit concerned. We all know about my whole deal with David Peterson, but overall, the overall execution of the series was good, and hopefully they can carry it over to San Diego. These are big wins. Hopefully, again, like I said with San Diego, they don't get all angry from getting absolutely their head blown off right now. I don't know, what is the score of the
I think last time
San
it was
Diego
like
game?
10-1 or something like that.
Jesus Christ, man, they are getting destroyed. But you know what? That's a tomorrow problem.
happens.
But speaking of
10-1.
The tomorrow problem, let's get into this next series coming up against San Diego, which they will be traveling. No off days. Thank you so much. 4-game set coming up on the 22nd, which is tomorrow. Luis Severino will open this one up against Dylan Cease, who the Mets hit hard last time fairly well. And that will be starting off at 9:40 p.m. Eastern time, so it's going to be a late night one. Paul Blackburn gets game 2 against Joe Musgrove. We all remember him from game 3 of the Wild Card series, where we thought he had something on his ear. So We don't have fond memories, but we didn't hit him that time. Hopefully we do, because he has not had a fairly good season. But that will be at 9:40 as well for Game 2. David Peterson will get Game 3 most likely against Michael King, who has had a very good season as one of the main pieces going back in the Juan Soto trade. That will be at 8:40 for Game 3. And then for Game 4, we will have Jose Quintana, whoop-de-doo, against Martin Perez, a trade deadline acquisition. That will be a day game at 4:10. So a lot of late starts. Hopefully they come out of it alive. They have 4 opportunities. They're probably going to be like 5.5 games behind the Padres going into this. So they can make up ground. I'm not saying win all 4 games. I'd love to see them win all 4 games, but realistically, I mean, I'm hoping for a split. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
I feel like that's probably the best case scenario right now.
You can't ask for much, but just wait, look at the way both these teams have been playing. For San Diego, Fernando Tatis is obviously out. Ha-Seong Kim just got placed on the injured list this week, so they'll be down a couple of guys, but overall they've had so many players stepping up and contributing for them that they can still manage with what they have. I am very fascinated to see what happens with Joe Musgrove. I feel like that's just going to be really interesting. I'll be watching his ears very intensely, see what's going on there. Dylan Cease, that's going to be another good matchup because the Mets did well against him last time, and then they mentioned on the broadcast, but shortly after ended up throwing a no-hitter and turning back into the Dylan Cease that we kind of know. He's just overall really good pitcher. And for Severino, how like we talked about, working really deep into that game against Miami, going 113 pitches. What's his leash like?
Regular
no
rest.
off days. Just kind of seeing how long they kind of go with him in this next start, being that it is a really big game. I'm kind of interested to see about that. Paul Blackburn, this is his first like big start against like a good team.
Yes.
So I kind of see what he's got there because like we talked about as far as like, who else would you kind of be trusting in a playoff scenario? Like this would be a big start for him. And then, by that point, to have Quintana in Game 4, it's like, are we winning the series? Are we about to get swept? Like, him being that last piece that it's like, just don't mess this up. I feel like that's just going to be kind of interesting. And the Mets I feel like have struggled with Martin Perez for some reason, but this is a better
left hook
lefty.
lefty. That's probably why.
Yeah, I mean, they've been better against lefties than they used to, so I think that's also
Definitely.
nice. But I think overall, it's going to be tough. Like you said, the no off day traveling to San Diego, but then an off day traveling from San Diego to Arizona just kind of makes no sense. So
Yeah, I don't know
that was just not great, but it happens unfortunately when you have teams that far apart on the coast. So it's obviously a big series as we know, but I'm curious to see kind of how it goes. I mean, the Mets know this is a big series for them. We talk so much about like playing up to competition, playing down at competition. They played San Diego well last time they faced them, but San Diego's just been playing a lot better, and the Mets haven't been quite that level yet. So I just kind of want to see like how they react to knowing like, all right, these are huge games. Like, what is the sense of urgency? Maybe you're more aggressive trying to steal bases. Maybe Mendoza does have a quicker leash. Like, could we see a Diaz 6-out save or something like that? Like, I'm just kind of curious. Like, you really got to show me
treat
some
it like a
sense of
playoff
urgency
game
here. Yeah,
just
exactly.
treat it like a playoff game.
I do want to see like maybe some stuff that we wouldn't normally do, but like you just need to win. These are head-to-head matchups. We talk so much like, oh my gosh, we won a game, but San Diego just keeps winning. It's like here is your chance to truly gain ground when you have these head-to-head matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of my main nightmares, to be honest. Carlos Ortiz coming 3 out of 4 with Quintana losing Game 4. Could you imagine?
That
like
would,
I
that
said
would,
already.
Yeah, that would.
Could
really,
you imagine
really be frustrating.
they win the first 3?
I can imagine it, but
they
really
go
annoying.
into the 4th game. They're a half a game behind Atlanta. Atlanta loses. Quintana blows up once again. And they end up like, what is it, a game and a half behind them or something, like a game out. I mean, just like all of that work just basically flushed down the toilet because of Jose Quintana just being absolutely horrendous. Like that would be, I mean, that would hurt. Let's just say that. But maybe, who knows? Maybe Quintana bounces back. Maybe there's somebody else who has a blow up. Who knows? This is a big series. They have to come through, because if they don't, let's say they lose 3 out of 4, they're going to be in trouble. Let's just say we can't just see the Braves may be shorthanded right now. They may be injured, but they're still going to find a way to win games. They did find a way to win against a Phillies team that is really good. You can't count on other teams losing to keep playoff contention. I don't see any way that if the Mets play like shit in this next stretch of 7 games, I don't see any possibility that they won't be at least 5 games out of this last wild card spot. In these next 5, if these next 7 games they go 1-6, 2-5, I do believe that during the process of that, no less than 4 or 5 games out of this wild card spot, and then you're just going to keep digging yourself a hole. So this is their opportunity. Once again, this is a real key note for a lot of the top of the lineup as well. Hopefully Lindor continues to go. Mark Vientos.
It'd be quite a time for Alonso to have his like one hot streak.
Would be nice.
Can we have one hot streak? Like this would be a great time to have it. It really would.
It would be nice. It really would be nice. We've seen him hit very well in Petco before, so I'm hoping to see that, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we come back after this series happy folks. Hopefully they're in the 3rd wild card after that. Maybe they're a few games behind San Diego, and then we prepare for Arizona. So hopefully they kind of get into this pivotal part of the season, and then they address what they need to do at September 1st as well with how they move forward. So fingers crossed, everyone. Hopefully they're not jet lagged or anything. I don't want to hear any excuses about that, but I'm sure we will. Scheduling is ridiculous, but 162 has 162 type of repercussions, let's just say. We'll see you guys next time after this big San Diego series. Thank you for those of you who are watching, listening on playback. For those of you who came in and watched the entire stream to hang out with us, we appreciate you. For those of you who came in for a little bit, for those of you who came in late, what's going on? You can always watch this on replay. It lives forever on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, the audio version of this that drops 9 a.m. the following day. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on TikTok and on X. Follow everyone individually, including our 3rd mic, which is Andrew. He is not here today, but also Frank as well. You can follow him individually, me individually. We all shoot our loud mouths off on Twitter all the time. So make sure to go follow us and keep the conversation going. But other than that, let's go Mets. Big series ahead of us, and we'll see you guys next time.